This is The Space Shot, episode 367 for May 22nd, 2018. Cosmic Chat. I'm John Molnix. A couple of weeks ago, I sat down and was a guest on the Cosmic Chat podcast that's a production of the Hutchinson News in Kansas. I'm going to be sharing an encore presentation of that episode here today, but first I've got a couple quick updates. I'm on track for reading one book a week this year. I'm actually about at a book and a half. I finished Homesteading Space, the Skylab story, and my conversation with David Hitt will be out on Friday. We talk all about Skylab and some of his favorite parts of that mission. It was a great conversation, and you really should tune in on Friday and check it out. Skylab is one of the hidden gems, as it were, of the space program, and I really enjoyed my conversation with David, as I think all of you will as well. Earlier today, SpaceX launched a Falcon 9 rocket from Vandenberg Air Force Base that was carrying the Grace follow-on satellites, as well as 5 Iridium Next constellation satellites. If you follow The Space Shot on Facebook, you'll probably have noticed that I share the links for these launches, so be sure to check them out in the future if you missed it today. Now, without any further delay, here's my conversation with Ron Sylvester on the Cosmic Chat podcast. Enjoy.
Welcome to Cosmic Chat, a podcast about space exploration and aviation, brought to you by the Hutchinson News and the Cosmosphere. And here's your host, Ron Sylvester.
Welcome back to Cosmic Chat. Our guest today is John Molnix. John hosts 2 podcasts, The Space Shot and the Cosmosphere podcast, and we're happy to have him on our program. John recently made a fascinating presentation at a coffee at the Cosmosphere about storytelling and space exploration. He joins us by telephone from his home in Colorado.
So what's your personal favorite story that relates to space?
Oh, personal favorite story. I grew up with the shuttle flight. So for me as a little kid, those are always, some of the most vivid memories for me. But I think my favorite mission overall has got to be Cassini. I grew up, I was learning about the launch when I was a kid, and then the Huygens lander touched down in January of a semester that I was actually taking a astronomy class. So as those images started to come in from the lander, from Cassini, and from the Huygens lander, that was one of those moments where it was like, holy cow, this is something that's never happened before, and we're seeing it as it's happening, essentially. I mean, there's a little bit of a delay, but it was as real time as you could get with those images at that time. So for me, following Cassini from that point up until last year at end of mission, that's probably my favorite all-time story, as it were. Just the amount of new science that was brought back for that and how that changed our understanding of the outer planets is something that really spoke to me.
Yeah, it really was an amazing mission, and we were interested in it because the pilot, so to speak, in mission control was actually local guy who grew up in Wichita, went to space camp at the Cosmosphere, and ended up flying that thing. Yeah, ended up flying that mission. So
it's a sad day that now that we're not seeing those, the new tweets of new pictures coming from Cassini. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, maybe we'll see new stuff, coming from the Mars lander or whatever they're on to next. You also talked about science fiction and its role. I think, when I was a kid, I'm a little bit older, and I got really into War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, which is before my time, but it was really the first movie was coming out when I was a kid, and I read the book, and it really captured my attention. And it was around the time Mercury was launching, and so and we were actually getting out into space and looking at it, and it was that really captivated my attention. And I was kind of curious about what you thought the role of science fiction is in actually helping propel science.
How those interplay together is something that it's almost like a chicken and an egg type of instance. I know a lot of science fiction that's, it's predicting things in the future, and then also it's inspiring engineers and inspiring students to go out and pursue career paths that they help invent the future. It's one of those, I think science fiction is more of a reflection of what we're aspiring to do. And if there's something we're aspiring to, I think that's kind of where science fiction leads us. With Star Trek, because that's what I grew up with, the Next Generation in the 90s. And I watched the original series as well. But growing up with that, it was definitely one of those things that it inspired. And I think it also kind of informed. There was things. I think it was an Apple engineer who had the inspiration for QuickTime when he saw an episode of The Next Generation where Data was listening to a whole bunch of music files at the same time, and that's what inspired him to start creating QuickTime. I don't remember the specifics for that, but that's just one of the instances that kind of sticks out in my mind of science fiction inspiring technologies that we use today.
Well, and you talk about Star Trek. I always thought the first generation of flip phones, I always thought, hey, we've got a Star Trek communicator now,
It does even more than the communicators, if you think about it. What you have with the comm badges or those communicators are pretty rudimentary compared to what we have now. Like the Marco Polo app or FaceTime, and the visual communications that we have with modern smartphones kind of blows away those little communicators. But yeah, it's interesting how that form factor actually kind of came to be there for a while. So
I'm still waiting for flying cars. I seem to remember we were promised flying cars at one point, but
that would be nice. With the amount of drivers that have issues texting and driving and just driving on a flat road, I would be a little bit scared for something flying.
Getting back to real space and real science, we were talking about Cassini earlier and how excited you were and how exciting that was. And you had mentioned in your talk that this is really, to a lot of people, the golden age of space flight and space exploration. It's not, the nostalgia for the space shuttle or even for, things like the Wright stuff or the moon landing, which we're coming up on 50 years. But actually now is when, people should be excited and really paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah, it's one of those things that the media likes to, a lot of the sensational headlines you see, it's, we're running with this because NASA's not doing something right, or there was a failure for something, even though it was just a test for a new technology. The amount of things that are being done for new missions. InSight, the Mars InSight lander launches here in a couple days. Hopefully that weather hold goes away. The weather constraint will go away there for Saturday. But we're really entering a time where planetary science is starting to get bigger budgets. So we're going to start to hopefully see more missions to, both the outer planets and then the inner planets as well. I really am hopeful for the next couple decades and even, the past 20 years. It's one of those times where it's easy to take for granted how many missions we have going. And just looking at it, like you mentioned, we're about 50 years out. We're almost 50 years out. It'll be this December from Apollo 8. A half century in the time scale of human history is a blip. So it's something that it's easy to get discouraged, I think, for a lot of missions, but we can't let that get us down, as it were. There's a lot more to be excited about. SpaceX, Blue Origin, they're going to start launching, bigger rockets here in the coming years. And even NASA with SLS, once it starts flying, hopefully here soon, there's going to be a lot of heavier lift vehicles that can do missions that we just haven't had the chance to do up until now.
So when I was growing up, a launch of a rocket, even when you were growing up during the space shuttle, a launch of a rocket was a big deal. Now it seems like we've got a rocket launching every, couple of weeks with what SpaceX is doing and what other countries are doing. And it's really, I turn around and it's like, okay, there's a launch at 4:00 today.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And so, that's never happened before.
Well, and now we can watch the live streams of those launches. I mean, the live streams have been around for a while now, but with the phone, the last SpaceX launch that I watched, I was driving in the car. I was in the car passenger seat. I wasn't driving when I watched it, but I was in the car going down I-70, traveling about 75 miles an hour, watching a rocket launch on my smartphone. So it's starting to get to a point, like you said, where it's happening frequently enough that, it's basically blink. There's a week that goes by and there's at least one launch. So it's an awesome time if you're a fan of watching rocket launches.
Would you ever want to be a space tourist if that happens in our lifetime?
If I get the chance, I would definitely do it. I know Blue Origin is flying with they call their dummy that they send up in the New Shepard capsule. They call him Mannequin Skywalker. So I would gladly take the place of Mannequin Skywalker if I was given a chance. So.
And John, we appreciate you joining us for our podcast. You've got a couple of podcasts. Will you tell people a little bit about them and how they can find them?
Yeah, so about a year ago, actually, I decided I was out in Nebraska at the time with my mom for Mother's Day, and we were driving along, and I had been kind of just auditing what I do with my free time, and I decided I wanted to start a daily podcast. And today I will be recording episode 354, 355, and 356. So it's a busy day off here during the middle of the week for me, but I'm glad I had the chance to come on yours. But in addition of the podcast that I do called The Space Shot, I also volunteer at the Cosmosphere, and if you just search Cosmosphere in the podcast app of in your podcast app of choice, you'll be able to find the Cosmosphere and the Space Shot there. So those are both a lot of fun.
All right. Well, John, thanks for joining us, and
not a problem, Ron.
Good luck on the thing, and hope you get to make that space flight someday.
Me too. Hey, if I get to go up, hopefully you get to go up here soon too. Is that something you want to do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, hopefully we could do it together. We could make it a Cosmosphere launch up into space. How about that?
That sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron.
Cosmic Chat is a production of the Hutchinson News and the Cosmosphere. See more space news and events at hutchnews.com/space.
That's it for today. We'll be returning on Friday with my conversation with David Hitt on Skylab, so be sure to check it out. I'd love if you could do me a favor and leave a review for The Space Shot on iTunes. Reviews are the lifeblood for podcasts, so just take a minute, leave a quick review. I'd greatly appreciate it. Until next time, I'm John Molnix, and I'll catch you on the flip side.